Welcome, Betty. I'm glad you made it on. You're on Zoom. Okay, welcome everyone. Great to see all your faces. We'll wait just a few more minutes to get everyone online. Okay, welcome to folks that are just getting online. We'll go ahead and get started, and as people filter in. So this is Eugene Insight, our weekly Sunday Sangha, now online. Happy to be able to continue practicing the Dharma with each of you. So we are still a donation-based, volunteer-run Sangha, and we're still paying rent at Escape Dance Studio. supporting that studio. So please, if you can, donate. Or if you haven't yet become a supporting donor, uh, donating monthly, that's an option as well. We do have Venmo now at the request of one of our Sangha members. Venmo is another way besides PayPal to donate online, and it's with a phone number. So the phone number is 206-356-0354. It's 206-356-0354. If you use Venmo, you can send it to that phone number. It'll transfer to the Eugene Insight bank account. Or PayPal at eugeneinsight@gmail.com. eugeneinsight@gmail.com. So every week we get together and one of us leads on a particular topic related to mindfulness and the Dharma. Tonight I wanted to speak about the practice of self-compassion and how valuable it is in our lives, in our practice for our journey towards freedom, really. So self-compassion is, I think, in the bigger picture, it's the product of one of these amazing things about being human. Perhaps the most amazing thing, that we have the capacity to know what's happening in ourselves and then choose to treat ourselves or relate to ourselves in a particular way. This is not a capacity that all beings have in the natural world. This is something that we uniquely as humans, perhaps, or several species, have developed the capacity to do, to know themselves and to choose to relate to themselves with compassion, with kindness, with gratitude, etc. And it's this very capacity for self-awareness that gives us this profound ability to change, to affect, to transform, to evolve ourselves and our experience. So self-compassion is an ancient, in that way, a very ancient human practice. And it's also an ancient practice in the insight meditation tradition, as well as now being studied for decades in modern neuroscience. And yet, despite this long history, it seems sometimes out of reach, or sometimes one of the most challenging things for us to practice. Compassion in an insight meditation sense is when one's heart is open and meets suffering or meets stress, meets challenge. It's one of the 4 Brahma Viharas or divine abodes, which I've talked about many times now, which are loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, feeling joy for other people's joy, and equanimity. So in this natural open heart that we have meets the world, it's naturally friendly, loving and kind, and that's loving kindness. When this open heart we have meets challenge or stress or suffering, it turns to this flavor of compassion, this hue of tenderness. When it meets another person's joy or happiness or good circumstance, it also lights up with joy. And when it's in a resting place, it rests in equanimity. So those are the 4 Brahma Viharas, which we'll be focusing on. Just one of them, self-compassion today. It also shows up in insight meditation as one of what's called unworldly feelings, or perhaps better put, liberating feelings or emotions. Emotions that support us in evolving our hearts to be able to let go, to be able to release. Now, this is spoken about in the suttas as something we should practice. Not just practice, but actually dwell within. The wording is we should dwell, pervading compassion towards ourselves, others, and all sentient beings. And that this is the most powerful way for us to fully release our entanglement with the stress and suffering that we're with in this life. In other words, this letting go or letting be, this release into peace or well-being is facilitated quite readily through the experience of self-compassion. In neuroscience, in the past few decades, it's also been studied and has shown now over dozens and dozens of trials and research studies to reduce anxiety and depression, to increase healing of the physical body, improve relationships, have a general greater resilience, even motivation amidst the inevitable challenges of our lives. So self-compassion in general, we could talk about is just having an orientation of kindness or tenderness instead of one of self-criticalness or judgment. A sort of softening of the heart in response to suffering instead of what is a natural response also to tighten up or to try to avoid. One of the interesting ways that I think is talked about in a psychological sense is is that we have a general tendency to fight, flight, or freeze. You've all heard that before, in response to a threatening or scary or challenging situation. That fight in our internal psychology looks like self-criticism. It is often turned around on ourselves, that it's our fault, that we've done something wrong, and we're not good enough. The flight is a movement in ourselves often to abandon or to neglect or to exile parts of ourselves that are in pain, suppress. And the freeze response in this context is to detach from our bodies, stay up in our heads, distract, deal with something else. So instead of this fight, flight, and freeze internally, with self-compassion, we're doing sort of the exact opposite of those three. Instead of being self-critical, we're staying in wise relationship with ourselves. Instead of abandoning ourselves, we're actually entering back into relationship in deeper and deeper ways. And instead of freezing up in our minds or our concepts, we're staying grounded in the body. We're staying present for what is, so that the natural change and flow of life can unfold. So cultivating self-compassion is not necessarily that hard. It starts with, first of all, knowing that we're suffering. This is where the first noble truth in this teaching starts, is there is suffering. And we don't always know that's the case. So our mindfulness begins to refine our understanding and our vision of, oh, yeah, there's stress here right now in myself and others or in the world. And then taking the second step to meet it in a kind, intimate, loving way. And then third, to cultivate this quality in ourselves so that we can begin to let go more and more into life as it is. Shave off the resistance and fear melt away into a more spacious, easeful, peaceful place. So I think it helps to be able to access self-compassion when we have a wise view, the first step on the Eightfold Noble Path. One of those wise views that I've talked about many times is that we are connected. We are fundamentally interconnected, where science has proven that as well. Why this is important is that connection, or acknowledging our shared human experience, that we all suffer, we all have stress, is like a doorway. It begins to make it easier to feel we're not alone. But also, knowing we're connected gives rise to compassion quite naturally. So it's an important view for the natural expression of compassion and for the practice of it. So we all experience pain, we all make mistakes. So knowing that it's okay to fail, it's okay to make mistakes, that we can't expect ourselves to be perfect. We can't expect ourselves to know everything. Second wise view is that compassion is a natural capacity we all have that we may or may not readily have access to right now. This is important because then compassion is less a self-centered, striving, effortful activity. Perhaps it might feel like that at first, but we know that if we take this view, that it will get easier, it will become natural, that it's something that's already present within us that will come forth as we begin to unblock or unstick the old views or old perceptions that we've had of ourselves. Third, that compassion is a conscious choice that we have. We can't control what happens in the world with others and even with ourselves. We can't control the ways we've been conditioned already, and they will arise. But what we can choose is the way we relate to them. And compassion is a choice in that way. Lastly, that pain is not the problem. Suffering or stress in our lives is not the problem. In fact, a wise view is that it is our teacher. It's a patient guide on our path, waiting for us to awaken to it. What our pain does not need is to be changed, to be pushed away, to be fixed, to be explained to why it's okay, to be talked down to or minimized. It really just needs to be in good company. And that, some way you could say, is our job as practitioners, is to be in good company with our pain or our stress or our suffering. To be a good companion, to be with. So we'll do some compassion practice a little bit later, and then I'll talk more about the nuts and bolts of that practice, why it's important, how it evolves, where it might lead us if we decide to put our energy there. Before we do, we'll break up into small groups and have a little bit of discussion, get to know each other a little bit more, and get our thoughts going about where we're at in relation to self-compassion. So the prompt I'll suggest is, how has self-compassion benefited us, or how has it helped us? And what is the main thing, or what are the multiple things that block us or come in our way as we try to move towards self-compassion in our lives? So what are the ways it's benefit us, and what are the obstacles we find as we begin to approach it. I will create some what are called breakout rooms. You'll see on your screen a message coming up that will invite you into a room. It'll be 2 to 3 people per room. It might take a moment to get everyone settled in. I might switch someone around here or there. You have about 3 minutes each to share, so you're welcome to time yourself. I'll also send out a message, so it should show up on your screen when it's time to switch as well. If you have 3 folks in your room, then go ahead and do 2 minutes each instead. Okay, should all have the invite now. Okay, here we all are back. So I'm curious to hear if anyone would like to share just a little snippet from your conversation or insight you had around the prompt. If you'd like to share, just unmute yourself and go ahead and speak.
Yeah, hi. Yeah, I was really struck in my conversation with my partner about how easy it is to focus on trying to get rid of some emotional or physical suffering. And that's totally understandable. So the more helpful way to go, as you said, is to be with it and to be kind to ourselves as we're experiencing that. But it's a challenge. I just kind of get into this place of trying to get rid of it. So it's important and helpful to at least be aware of that. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Mm-hmm.
Justin, I really liked the fight, flight, freeze, that scenario that you discussed before we went into our breakout rooms. The spin you put on it really helped me to relate to it more. And, in ways that I escape suffering, escape, the opportunity to be self-compassionate in those different ways that you illuminated. So that was helpful to me. Thank you.
Great, yeah. That comes from a psychologist and researcher named Kristen Neff. Kristen Neff, the flight, flight, and freeze.
Justin, I don't know if everybody else is having this, but my screen now says viewing Marilyn Piccarello's screen, and my screen.
Oh yeah, yeah, I'm seeing that as well. Let me see if I can have that stop.
We all have this problem out there.
Okay.
Thank you. So I'll just jump on this while I'm online. Is that this is I've been doing some coaching with Justin, and this is one of the meditations that I've been dealing with, is this issue of self-compassion. And it's been a real challenge for me to bring parts of myself to the table without judgment, and to move to trying to give them loving kindness instead, the compassion that comes with it, to acknowledge the suffering. So I really appreciate this practice as a beginning way to begin to deal with parts of myself that I haven't let surface all my life, really.
Thank you, Stan.
Thank you.
Maybe one more?
Yeah, I'll just add that I love what you said at the beginning about how pain and suffering is not the problem, like it's our teacher. And I find, like, as other people have said, one of the hugest obstacles for me is just that voice of judgment, and not judging myself for being angry, and not judging myself for being sad, and not trying to make it go away, but instead really treating it like a teacher that's telling me, like, hey, slow down, take care of yourself, let yourself process and heal, give yourself that, like, spaciousness in that time, because this is arising for a reason. And it's like you can't make emotions arise, so when they do, it's actually worth it to just allow them to be there. and to let them flow through you and out of you, because it's like they've been hiding somewhere inside of your body, and now this is your opportunity to let them go. So thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, well, I will guide everyone through a practice of self-compassion. Find a place in your home that is comfortable for you. It's important to be comfortable in this practice. We don't want you falling asleep necessarily, but yeah, a posture that is gentle, feels nourishing. I'll guide you through a few simple techniques and then offer some phrases for you to repeat to yourself, or you might decide to shift or tweak some of these phrases so they work better for you. And we'll go through compassion, not just for ourselves, but also for another person and for the suffering in the world today. Close your eyes if that feels comfortable to you. And begin initially just by bringing your attention to the simple process of breathing happening in your body. Following the breath as it comes in through the nostrils, goes down to fill the belly, and back out again. And with each out breath, allowing more and more the activities, the busyness of the day to begin to melt away. Seeing if you can come into relationship with this breath and body as if it was an old friend. As a support to this practice of self-compassion, you might consider placing a hand on your body, perhaps the center of your chest. Continuing to breathe and just feel the presence of your hand, this nurturing touch. You might even breathe in and out through the center of your chest, softening, widening. Relaxing into this present moment even further. You might also consider the support of a slight smile in the corners of your mouth. And breath through the heart, hand on the body, a slight smile, just staying here for a moment. And this is a place you can always come back to through the meditation as I begin to lead us through some visualizations. First, I'll invite us to call to mind a person in our lives that we care about and that is suffering. Allowing our intuition to guide and bringing an image of them into our hearts, perhaps sitting aside them at a table or a bench. And first, just feeling their stress, feeling their challenge. And then you might offer them some reflections. I can see that you're suffering right now. I too know what it's like to be with challenge. I care about your stress or suffering. May you learn to be with it with ease, knowing that I'm here with you. Knowing that I'm here with you. I can see that you're suffering right now. I too know what that's like. I care about that experience you're having. I wish you great ease with it, knowing that I'm here with you. Knowing that I'm here with you. You may choose to repeat these phrases or just some of your own as sincerely as possible. And beginning to release this image, perhaps even thanking this person for being here with you. And then returning to the breath in the heart, the hand on the body, slight smile on the face. Allowing the heart to rest. Now I'll invite you to call to mind an image of yourself from a time that you were suffering in a place of challenge or stress. It could be right now, or it could be another moment in your past. Finding a way to bring that self, yourself, into your heart right now. Perhaps even sitting across from yourself or aside yourself at a table or a bench. And offering yourself some reflections. This is a moment of stress or suffering. Suffering is natural, it's a part of life. And I care about this experience you're having. May I learn to be with it with ease, knowing I'm here with myself. Knowing I'm here with you. I can see that this is a moment of suffering. I care about this experience you're having. Suffering is a natural part of life. May you be with it with ease, knowing that I'm here with you. Knowing that I'm here with you. You can repeat these phrases or find some of your own that resonate. Meeting yourself as intimately and sincerely as possible. staying with your breath. I know that you suffer at times, and I care about those experiences. Challenge is a part of life. May you learn to be amidst it with ease, knowing that I'm here with you. Knowing that I'm here with you. Beginning to release this image of yourself, perhaps even thanking it. Thanking yourself for being here in this way. And return to the breath in the body, the hand on the chest, smile on the face, ever so slightly, allowing the heart to rest, allowing the heart to rest. And lastly, calling to mind a bigger image, an image of all those countless people around the world right now, sitting in their homes, in their gardens, watching the news, wondering what will become of them, what will become of this world. And offering some reflections. I can feel that we're suffering right now. This is a moment of suffering in the world. And I care deeply about that experience. Suffering is a part of this life as humans. May we learn to be with it, amidst it, with ease, knowing that we're here together. Knowing that we're here together. And this is a moment of suffering for many of us. And I care about that experience. Suffering is a natural part of this life as humans. May we learn to be amidst it with ease, knowing that we're here together. Knowing that we're here together. Returning once again to the breath in the heart, the hand on the body, a simple smile on the face. Allowing the heart to once again rest. Breath by breath, resting now. And closing this meditation with a short poem. Don't worry, your pain has never been the problem. Never been bad or wrong. Never worth less than your joy. Don't worry, your pain has never been your monster. Never wanting to scare you. Never keeping you small. It's always just been waiting for you. Been reaching out for your hand. Wondering where it is you're going alone. Don't worry, your pains never needed your solutions. Never healed from your expectations. Never felt inspired from your mind's visions. It's just been simply waiting for you, just you to arrive, empty-handed, available, to be with, no matter what. Pain, the patient guide, teaching us this is the only way we grow, the compassion we need to trust deeply enough to let go, to fall together, to be free. The only way we grow, the compassion we need to trust deeply enough to let go. Gently beginning to open your eyes if they were closed, move your body in a way that supports you. We'll go ahead and take a 5-minute mindful break and return here. I'll offer some reflections and we'll have some more discussion until 8. So let's see, I have 7:33. So back around 7:38, 7:39, we'll get going again. Thank you. Welcome back. So much I could say about compassion. Some accidental pressing of the screen sharing happening on people's screens. No problem. Compassion is just sort of a miracle, in my humble opinion. I really celebrate the fact that we have this capacity, and I pray for all of us that we begin to experience this, if we haven't yet, that we begin to relish this innate capacity we have to care for our own stress and suffering, because it's not going to go away. So let's imagine, even if we were to be able to heal all the parts of ourselves that need our attention, there's still so many others around us, so many others in the world, in the natural world. So for the rest of our lives, compassion will always be a crucial, foundational tool that we have, or experience that we have. For me, when I'm in a state of self-compassion or compassion for others, I'm in some ways more fully present than in any other time, more fully connected than in any other time, more fully satisfied in some way than any other time. That's fascinating. And I've been practicing this for some time, but just to put that out there, that our view on suffering and stress can transform so completely that we're actually nourished by that experience of being with that which is challenging. And if that is possible for us, what an incredible, incredible thing. I think compassion is not only important for our own healing or for the healing of others, but also for teaching us how to be present, teaching us how to simply be with what's happening, instead of, like we've talked about, like some of you have shared, the persistent trying to fix, trying to change, trying to find a solution. I watch children here at Lost Valley, and they're not so different than us, children, of course. And someone will get hurt, and they'll run to their parents, and they'll say, Mom, this is what happened. Or Dad, this is what happened. And we have a choice as parents of ourselves or as practitioners. How do we respond in those moments? Is it trying to find something to distract, or something better, or quickly just try to make it go away, or it'll be okay? Or are we willing just to hold that child or that part of ourselves in that experience? And that, to me, from what I've observed in others and myself, is really the medicine. And I've talked about this before, just the medicine of just being in presence with. Yeah, I hear you. I understand. I see this is a moment of stress or suffering. Yeah, this is natural. This is okay. And it's okay largely because I'm here with you. Largely because I'm here with you. So those parts of ourselves that are stressed or suffering are often needing just that simple experience. And it turns out that we, as the present moment self, as the meditative self, we also need that. We also crave that connection, crave that experience of just being with. So as I said in the beginning, and as I shared in the poem, the stress or suffering, the pain that we carry can really be our greatest teacher, and really be seen as something that's waiting in the wings for us to notice. This opportunity we have for connection. So why is it so hard to practice? Well, we all have our own stories of that. We all have our own conditioning. But perhaps, at least at first, the biggest thing is that it means we have to be intimate with our pain. And most of our lives, we've probably done everything we could to not feel pain. And it's perfectly natural as well. Avoiding, suppressing, finding some way not to fully feel it. Many of us also think that it will undermine our progress somehow. It'll undermine our capacity to make changes that we need in our lives, or it may never get out of it, and never get out of this painful place. We think that if we don't become critical and maintain a critical distance from ourselves, then we're just doomed to keep being in pain. We're doomed to keep failing. We're doomed to keep not being perfect. So we think this is a motivational tool to be critical, or we think this is a protective tool to be distant. But it really sells ourselves short. It is very limited in its capacity to protect this strategy of distancing. It's very limited in its capacity to keep us safe. It's very limited in its capacity to bring us into a place of ease and joy. We also, many of us think we just aren't worthy of it underneath all of it. That if you only knew me, if you'd had to live with me for as long as I have, you know I wouldn't deserve it. You'd know that. So sometimes that self-unworthiness or shame runs really, really deep. We might also think that we know better, that we should know better to have acted that way, or to have even got ourselves in a situation like that. And somehow it's our fault. Somehow we should have known. In a spiritual lens, when we get into this practice, we often take meditation on in the same way. We are pushing ourselves. We are deriding ourselves. We're just can't quite do it right again. This self-compassion thing, just not really good at it. We think that maybe by being compassionate, we're actually avoiding the pain. I've heard many people say that. I've thought that myself before. Oh, well, if I'm compassionate, I'm not really doing the practice. Practice is really being with the pain. It's being in the pain. We think that maybe we're focusing on ourselves too much. And it's not the real practice, because we're so focused on, our thoughts, or we're so focused on just what our problem is. I thought this practice was about something bigger than that. Thinking it's somehow weaker or less of a practice to be tender, to be open, to be vulnerable. So a lot of reasons why, a lot of blocks that we have from our past conditioning that we carry forward. So for each of us, we need to sort of see in this practice, and maybe we did in the last half an hour, where it is we land in that. What are the stories? What are the beliefs that we carry that are preventing us from experiencing this natural open-heartedness towards ourselves? So for many of us, we start by first just acknowledging our pain, that none of us are above it. Building slowly the courage to be with it, building the resiliency of heart and mind by just staying with it, just tolerating it, at least for a while, at least in certain circumstances when we feel safe. Perhaps noticing these stories earlier and earlier. And then in this practice, we're really just learning to authentically care, to sincerely care about ourselves, which we may never have been shown. It may never have been modeled for us. And we're asked to take a risk, to actually be vulnerable with our pain, and not knowing where it's going to go, not knowing what this moment of being caring is going to lead to. It might actually make yourself safe enough that all sorts of past pain might reveal itself. So that can be scary. We're sort of taking a risk to be vulnerable to the pain itself, not knowing what will come. But again, we're building this resilience to being vulnerable, to being open. And eventually seeing that self-compassion does heal. It heals parts of ourselves. Seeing that it does support us in our lives, but also our mindfulness practice, which isn't always so clear to us. That when we're in a space of compassion, we're actually more able to rest, to relax, to be with what is, which is sort of the basic instructions that we get in this practice. Just be with what is, just breathe. The latent aversion or tendencies of judgment often just color everything. So by practicing the self-compassion, we sometimes just melting that away enough so we can actually see what really is happening. Then learning to commit to this new response because we know we're stronger with it. We know we're safer with it. We know there's no real other way that works. And then beginning to see a fundamental habit change where we go there first. Oh, I see stress. What do I need to do? Just be with it in this kind way. I think the incredible thing, though, is that in the lens of insight meditation and in our path towards the end of suffering or liberation or peace or ease, whatever we want to call it for us, that compassion brings us to deeper insights. Deeper insights about the universality of our human experience. That pain is inevitable for all of us. It hurts for all of us. That anything we're experiencing, millions of others are experiencing right now. Brings us to an insight about our fundamental innocence. Also, that we don't know what's right. That we never were made to be perfect. That in each new moment, we're presented with new challenges. And we're going to do our best, but we're not clairvoyant. We can't see the future. We can't predict or know the exact right thing to do that will do no harm or that will be the perfect or right thing. That's a really sweet way, I think, to be with yourselves. Like, you didn't know it. You didn't know. It's like with a child, like, they didn't know. Well, it's still the same with us. We have one limited perspective on life, colored by our past conditioning, and we try our best. And also this fundamental okayness, I'll call it. I talk about that. I'm not sure if it really makes sense, but this like compassion can bring us into this place where we are ready to trust and to let go at deeper and deeper levels. So it really serves us in not only healing, but in actually coming back home, so to speak, returning back to a place of safety, ease. All is okay. So like I said in the beginning, this practice of compassion, it builds on itself, it grows momentum. And what begins to happen is that we start to feel more connected. And as we feel more connected, compassion begins to naturally come out. Compassion begins to be revealed as the natural expression of the heart when it's safe and connected. So we begin to cultivate this heart, and then the natural heart of ours meets us halfway. It's this interesting thing, where the momentum that we've built, the experience of connection that we've begun to discover, takes on a life of its own. There's something incredibly reassuring in those moments, because we see that compassion is not something we have to train ourselves in anymore. It's a product of living in alignment with the way things are, seeing things in a wise view. It's a product of that. Almost sort of part and parcel of life itself, at least as a human, is this sweet, sweet capacity to care. So the compassion practice we did is relatively simple, and I'm inviting you to take pieces of that with you. Just a simple touch, breathing through the heart, the smile. This alone can actually bring about that experience of care for oneself. And then the phrases, finding something that works for you. That's genuine. The main ones usually being, that you see that the suffering is happening, that you care about it, and that it's natural, doesn't need to go away. And I like to add the line that I'm here with you. That's sort of one of the foundational feelings of compassion, that being with suffering. So I'm curious to hear, in the remaining time we have, how the experience was for you, or any insights that come for you, or any questions you have. If you're open to sharing, please just unmute yourself and go ahead and share with the group.
So, Justin, it sounds like we're having a reverb. I found myself doing a compassion and forgiveness meditation this morning. And to a lesser degree this evening, I found myself having the same experience of finding myself crying most of the way through the practice. And I guess I would be interested to hear what you have to say about that. About, I don't know. I'm not sure what I'm asking, but
How did it feel? How did it feel to be with yourself while you were crying?
it was good. It was odd. It was odd to sit through a meditation practice and cry for that half hour, you know? Yeah,
Mhm.
I felt better after. I mean, I let myself have my tears,
Yeah,
so it felt better.
yeah,
It just
beautiful.
seems,
Seems strange. It doesn't seem strange to me at all that when we are authentically willing to be with ourselves, that there is often grief or sadness there. Uh, and that not isn't necessarily something that will go away, and not that it needs to. I asked how it was for you because I was focused more on, can that experience of crying with yourself be the sweetest thing that you've done today? You know, be the most nourishing thing that you've done today. Not because then it's over and you feel better, but because it's really intimate and it's really tender, and that uh, I think we all crave that experience of being held in our pain. Um, and I think that, I don't know the stories behind the sadness, if there are any, but there's also just a universality to this tenderness of heart, and I can feel that too. I'm just sort of crying with the world, you know, crying with myself, and feeling that um, this is just a natural, sweet expression of the human heart. Um, and so yeah, I would really honor that experience. In fact, I would celebrate it.
thank you.
I just want to say I'm Diana, and thank you so much for the lead and the talk. And it was so rich. I think it's almost hard to pull up one thing to respond to. Um, I really, I mean, it was a great, not an argument for self-compassion, but a great invitation to self-compassion and to learning more about it. And I like I love the little practice you took us through in terms of, doing that for a friend, doing it for ourselves, doing it for somebody who was hurting. That was a great thing. And I also got a lot out of just the idea, because I'm just being introduced. I've heard of it for a while, the topic of self-compassion, but I'm just kind of ready. And I loved what you said about some of us think that not being I'm not saying it right, but the judging and the criticalness will keep us safe or protected. That there's something so vulnerable about being willing to be gentle with ourselves, that, well, we might miss something, or you didn't say that, but that's what it is for me. So, that's constantly on guard kind of thing that we can learn to do when we're trying to be perfect and not succeeding, and being more hard on ourselves. So I was really, really glad to hear what you had to say tonight.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. Maybe one more if there is one.
Um, I liked what this doesn't have to do with the meditation itself, but I really liked what you said earlier when you said, when we practice self-compassion, we cultivate heart. And then interestingly enough, the heart starts to cultivate us in a way, and it becomes this very luscious cycle. And I think it's just a beautiful feeling for me. I also think that with everything going on with the pandemic, I think that this may be for me, it's a easier time to practice self-compassion because there is so much rawness and vulnerability up at the surface. And so that's another sort of cycle by tying into compassion for others, I'm more able to tie into my own, or not tie, I don't know what the right word is, but more able to access and be in my own compassion for myself. Thank you for the
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Maureen. That was beautifully put. Yeah.
Just Linda here. I just want to thank you, Justin. That was very beautiful. And I just wanted to say that we're going to be offering, if I could, a little announcement. We're going to offer a Wednesday morning practice check-in for anybody that's interested. It's just an extra time to sit together and talk about our practice, questions, or share what's going on. I'll be leading that Wednesdays from 10 to 11 during this period of time particularly. So I think I'll send out a link again so that everybody can click on if they're interested. Thanks so much for tonight. So beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. If you're willing, I would love to just spend 20, 30 seconds together in silence again. I know we're a little over time, but and share a poem with you. So. This poem is called Out of the Cave by Joyce Sutphin. When you've been at war with yourself for so many years that you have forgotten why, when you've been driving for hours and only gradually begin to realize that you've lost the way, when you have cut hastily into the fabric, when you have signed papers in distraction, when it has been centuries since you watched the sunset or the rain fall, and the clouds drifting overhead pass as flat as anything on a postcard. When in the midst of these everyday challenges, you understand you could wake up, you could turn and go back to the last thing you remember doing with your whole heart. That passionate kiss, the brilliant drop of love rolling along the tongue of a green leaf. Then you wake. You stumble from your cave, blinking in the sun, naming every shadow as it slips. So, may that be so for all of us, that we live in that place of our whole heart and relish these times. I've relished the time with you tonight, and I hope you have as well. Take care. We'll see you next Sunday. Be here again, and one of our Sangha members will be leading. I'll see you then.
Thank you, Justin.
Yeah.
Thank you, Justin.
You're welcome.